It is clear that Bitcoin is something that retail investors want access to, that institutional investors want access to. And importantly, some of our most trusted providers who are fiduciaries or have duties of best interest want to provide this product to the retail public. So I think, as Anthony said, an approval isn't inevitable. The dichotomy between a futures product and a cash product can't go on forever.
SEC의 비트코인 현물 ETF 승인은 불가피하다라고 주장하고 있는 인물은 전 SEC 위원장이었던 제이 클레이튼입니다. 그는 현 SEC 의장인 게리겐슬러 이전에 SEC의 수장으로 있었던 만큼 그 누구보다 SEC의 정책과 방향성에 대해서 잘 알고 있는 인사입니다. 현재 비트코인 현물 ETF 승인은 크립토 시장의 가장 뜨거운 관심자이자 화두인 만큼 전 SEC 위원장이었던 그가 생각하는 향후 비트코인 현물 ETF의 방향성과 승인 여부에 대한 인사이트를 함께 들어보도록 하겠습니다.
The SEC has delayed making a decision again on whether to approve the first U.S. ETF that invests directly in Bitcoin. That comes just days after a court ruled that the SEC's rejection of Grayscale's ETF application was, quote, arbitrary and capricious. Many viewed that ruling as clearing the way for the SEC to approve an ETF. Instead, the SEC deferred a decision on filings from VanEck, Invesco, Valkyrie, and WisdomTree. A BlackRock spokesperson said its application was also deferred. The next deadlines for SEC decisions come in mid-October, making the fall a critical time for crypto regulation. Joining us now for more on the outlook, Jay Clayton. He's the former chair of the SEC and a CNBC contributor. It's good to see you this morning. A couple things. First and foremost, are you surprised that the SEC deferred after the prior ruling?
No, I'm not surprised. The deferral of the applications and the additional time period as a result of that deferral doesn't line up perfectly, but it lines up pretty well with the time for action in the D.C. Circuit on the D.C. Circuit's action to say your reasoning for not approving a spot Bitcoin ETF is inadequate.
You know, Anthony Pompliano, who was with us within the last half hour, is about as big of an advocate for crypto assets as I think you'd find anywhere, without question. He said that Mr. Gensler has a, quote, impossible job. And he sounded sympathetic towards the idea that although he thought this was inevitably going to happen, that protecting investors weighs heavily in all of this as well. How would you assess that comment?
I caught your interview with Anthony, and I thought he did a remarkable job of synthesizing a lot of what is going on at the moment, but also what is going on over time. And the job for the SEC, has been a challenging one. Crypto is a technology. Bitcoin is one manifestation of that technology providing a product. When crypto came to our retail markets, many people used crypto to develop products that were clearly non-compliant with our securities laws. They raised money in effectively public offerings without going through the rigors of public registration. And the SEC had to tamp down on that. And we did. Now the SEC has to deal with the lines between securities offerings, securities trading, non-securities offerings, non-securities tradings, and things like stablecoin, which Anthony mentioned, and have clearly shown promise. So it is a job that is challenging, but it's one that the SEC and let me point this out, many other federal financial regulators have to take on.
So all that said, if you were in the chair today, would you have approved it?
Well, look, I'm not there, and I'm not going to have that kind of, I do this. What I have said, as this has developed, it is clear that Bitcoin is not a security. It is clear that Bitcoin is something that retail investors want access to, that institutional investors want access to. And importantly, some of our most trusted providers who are fiduciaries or have duties of best interest want to provide this product to the retail public. So I think, as Anthony said, an approval isn't inevitable. The dichotomy between a futures product and a cash product can't go on forever. And so I think that's the path we're on.
So if it's inevitable, Jay, then what is the SEC deferring? Why is the SEC deferring the applications? Are they looking for other ways, other grounds in which to try and reject these applications? And what is the case to be made when there are, futures ETFs for Bitcoin that are investors safer buying a Bitcoin futures ETF than a Bitcoin cash ETF?
What I think we are finding out is that for a long time, and I held this view, let me be clear, and I held the view that we were uncertain whether cash trading was so easily manipulatable that retail folks should not have access to it. There are now large institutions with surveillance mechanisms who are coming in and saying, no, that's not the case. We can rely on the efficacy of the cash market to a sufficient extent where we believe this is an appropriate product. That's a shift. Now, the SEC has been given time by the DC Circuit to reassess and perhaps come up with other reasons. Maybe there will be some, but I don't see those.
So what's your assessment then of what Chair Gensler is doing? Why, if everybody in the industry is saying it's inevitable and he's just going to look for ways to reject the applications when there's a futures ETF already on the market, what's the point here?
We'll give them time. There's a roughly 45-day time period, both in the DC Circuit and on the deferral of these applications. In the relative scheme of things, and I think Anthony was he didn't say this directly, but in the relative scheme of things, 45 days is a short amount of time. And I do expect that we'll have progress on this going forward.